What is true strength? Is it the size of one's muscles, the fierceness of a battle cry, or the ability to intimidate with a single glance? We have been conditioned to believe in an archetype of masculinity that is rarely questioned. Welcome to The Truth, Dark Psychology, the channel that tears off the masks to reveal what lies beneath. Today, we will explore the psyche of an icon who personifies raw strength, to understand how the most powerful armor can, in fact, be hiding the deepest void. If you are drawn to the unsaid and the hidden, subscribe and like this video, because today's journey will take us to the heart of vulnerability disguised as power. Jason Momoa's public image was no accident. It was a meticulous construction, both by the industry and by himself. He represents the primordial alpha male archetype, large, physically imposing, with an energy that oscillates between fierce protection and latent threat. Psychologically, society craves these archetypes because they offer a sense of security and order. Momoa filled a void left by past icons, but he did so with a modern twist, adding elements of the noble savage and the family man. This image is an immense tool of power, allowing him to command attention and reverence without saying a word. A form of environmental and social control based purely on physical presence and reputation. This construction, however, is a double-edged sword. By becoming the vessel for the public's projections of strength and virility, the individual behind the image risks merging with it. The persona of Jason Momoa, the indomitable warrior, is so potent that any deviation from the standard can be seen as weakness or inauthenticity. This creates constant psychological pressure to perform strength, even in moments of doubt, pain, or exhaustion. The mask is not just for the public. Over time, it becomes a defense mechanism for the user, who may begin to believe that his only valid identity is the one everyone applauds, suppressing other facets of his personality. The demand for this persona is relentless and feeds on a cycle of reinforcement. Hollywood casts him in roles that solidify this image. The public celebrates this image, and the industry in turn demands more of the same. From a dark psychology perspective, this can be seen as a form of a gilded cage. He achieved success by fitting perfectly into a mold, but this same mold limits his emotional and human expression. The need to constantly be the alpha can inhibit vulnerability, sadness, and uncertainty, essential human emotions that are seen as antithetical to the archetype he embodies. The very choice of roles, like Khal Drogo and Aquaman, reinforces this narrative of raw, instinctive power. They are characters who primarily resolve conflicts through physical force, whose emotions are expressed in bursts of anger or fierce loyalty, but rarely in quietness or introspection. This type of casting is a career strategy, but also a psychological trap. He has become synonymous with a specific kind of power, a power that is admired but also dehumanizes, turning the person into a symbol, a fetish of strength for mass consumption. The real danger of this construction is what happens when real life doesn't fit the script. Personal challenges, heartbreaks, or existential crises cannot be solved with a trident or a war cry. The mask of strength then becomes a heavy burden. It prevents him from asking for help, as the alpha must be the source of strength, not the one who seeks it. This initial chapter shows us that creating such a powerful image is an act of control over public perception, but one that, paradoxically, can lead to a profound loss of control over one's own emotional identity. To understand Jason Momoa's psyche, it is crucial to look at his origins. Raised in Iowa by his mother, far from his father of Hawaiian descent, he grew up between two cultures, fully belonging to neither. This absence of a father figure is a classic psychological wound, known to create a void that the individual spends a lifetime trying to fill. The lack of a primary male role model can lead to a relentless search for validation and a self-construction of masculinity based on external, often exaggerated, ideals. Momoa's hyper-masculine persona can be interpreted as an overcompensation, an attempt to become the unshakable embodiment of strength that he himself did not have as a direct reference in his childhood. This cultural duality, Hawaii representing his roots and ancestry, and Iowa representing his upbringing, forged in him a sense of being an outsider. Psychologically, feeling like a stranger can lead to two main reactions: the attempt to assimilate completely, or the creation of a strong, distinct identity of one's own that does not require the approval of either world. Momoa chose the second path. He embraced his Hawaiian heritage intensely, almost like armor. This connection to the culture and spirituality of his ancestors served as an anchor, but also as a key component of his public persona, a way to differentiate himself and create a unique niche of power. The search for identity in a young man growing up without a father often manifests in behaviors that test the limits of his own strength and courage. It is an attempt to prove his worth and his ability to survive and thrive to himself and the world. The famous incident where his face was slashed with a bottle in a bar, resulting in his characteristic scar, can be seen in this light, not just as a violent event, but as a brutal and unintentional rite of passage that, paradoxically, solidified his tough guy image. The scar became part of the mask, a physical symbol that he is a survivor, someone who bears the marks of battle. Psychology of paternal absence also teaches us about the hunger for belonging. By creating his own family and publicly positioning himself as a devoted father and husband during his relationship with Lisa Bont, Momoa was perhaps actively building what he lacked. However, this need to create the perfect family can also become a source of immense pressure. The need to be the pillar, the protector, and the provider can be a repetition of the cycle of emotional suppression, where the well-being of the tribe is placed so far above his own that his own emotional needs are systematically ignored or buried. Ultimately, this primordial wound may be the hidden engine behind his overwhelming ambition. The need to prove he is worthy, to build a legacy, to be seen as strong and reliable, can be a direct echo of that void left in childhood. Dark psychology does not see this as good or bad, but as an internal power dynamic. The wound becomes the source of strength, but at what cost? The same energy that propels him to stardom may be the same one that prevents him from accessing his own vulnerability and finding inner peace, far from the expectations of the archetype he so carefully constructed. Jason. Momoa's charisma is of a particular and potent variety, wild charisma. It is not the polished charm of a classic gentleman, but the magnetic attraction of a force of nature. This type of charisma operates on a primal level, evoking feelings of excitement, admiration, and a touch of danger. Psychologically, we are drawn to figures who seem free from the constraints of society, who live by their own code. Momoa projects this freedom through his appearance, his uninhibited behavior in interviews, and his passion for activities like rock climbing and motorcycling. He seduces the audience with the promise of raw authenticity, something many feel is missing in their own rigidly structured lives. This form of charisma is an extremely effective manipulation tool, even if it is unintentional. By positioning himself as someone authentic and real, he creates an implicit contrast with the perceived artificiality of Hollywood. This generates intense loyalty in his fans, who feel they are truly getting to know him. This parasocial connection is powerful. People are not just fans of his movies. They are fans of Jason Momoa, the individual, or at least the version of him that is presented. He controls the narrative of his own image by embodying an ideal of freedom that is, in itself, a carefully managed construct for public consumption. Asterisk, the element of danger is crucial to the seduction. The scar on his eyebrow, his physical intensity, and the fierce nature of his most famous characters contribute to an aura of unpredictability. We are programmed to pay attention to potential threats, and when that threat is packaged in a charismatic, and attractive package, it becomes hypnotic. It's the classic bad boy syndrome on a superhero scale. He seems like someone who could protect you from any danger, but also someone who carries a danger within himself. This duality is the essence of his attractive power, keeping the audience in a constant state of fascination and slight suspense. From a dark psychology standpoint, this charisma can be used to disarm and control. The loud, infectious laugh, the bear hug that engulfs a person, the direct and intense eye contact, all are behaviors that break down physical and psychological barriers. They create an instant and forced intimacy that can be overwhelming and difficult to resist. In a context of negotiation or influence, this ability to dominate the space and energy of a room gives him an immense psychological advantage. People are seduced into agreeing, following, and approving simply by the magnetic force of his personality. However, sustaining this wild charisma requires an enormous amount of energy and can lead to a burnout of the persona. What happens when the force of nature wants a day of calm? The expectation from the public and the industry is that he is always on, always being the larger-than-life Jason Momoa. The trap here is that the charisma that opened all doors for him also becomes his cell. He seduced the world with the image of a free and indomitable spirit, but to maintain that seduction, he must continually perform that freedom, a paradox that can silently erode the true spontaneity he projects so well. Jason Momoa's communication goes far beyond his words. It is anchored in his body language, which is a masterclass in spatial and psychological domination. He uses his size and physique not just as an attribute, but as an active tool to control the environment around him. Notice how he sits in talk shows, often sprawling, taking up as much space as possible, a technique known as power posing. This is not an unconscious gesture. It is a statement of status and confidence that sub-communicates to the interviewer and the audience that he is in command, completely at ease and unthreatened. The intensity of his eye contact is another pillar of his nonverbal communication. He doesn't just look at people. He fixes them with a penetrating gaze that can be interpreted in various ways, as intense focus, as a challenge, or as a way to create a deep and immediate connection. Psychologically, such strong eye contact can be destabilizing for the other person, breaking down their defenses and making them more receptive to influence. It is a subtle but powerful control tactic that establishes a hierarchy in the interaction, positioning Momoa as the dominant figure in the dynamic. The use of touch is another crucial facet of his body language. His vigorous hugs, pats on the back, and the way he frequently holds the shoulder or arm of interviewers are more than simple friendly gestures. They are acts of personal space invasion that, under the guise of cordiality, reassert his physical and social control. For the person being touched, it can be difficult not to yield to this demonstration of familiarity, even if it is, in essence, a demonstration of power. He establishes a physical intimacy that disarms and creates an instant bond, placing the other party in a psychologically more submissive position. Consider also his posture and movement. He walks with a purpose and a presence that consume the space. There is no hesitation in his movements. They are broad, deliberate, and confident. This kinesthesia projects an image of unshakable certainty and power. In a world where many feel insecure and try to shrink themselves, Momoa's expansiveness is magnetic. He teaches, through his body, a lesson in dark psychology. To be perceived as powerful, you must first act as if you already possess all the power, occupying space physically and energetically as if it were yours by right. This mastery of body language, however, reinforces the mask of strength and can be another obstacle to expressing vulnerability. A body that is trained to constantly project dominance and confidence can forget how to express doubt, fear, or sadness. The physical armor can become an emotional prison. What we see is a performance of power so ingrained that it can be difficult for him and for others to distinguish where the performance ends and where the true emotional state begins. His body language, his greatest tool of control over others, may also be the most effective tool of his own self-suppression. A quick pause in our analysis. If the complexity of the human mind and the strategies of power fascinate you as much as they do us, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your suggestion in the comments section could be the topic of our next deep dive. Now let's continue to unravel the secrets behind the icon. Jason Momoa is often presented as an example of positive or healthy masculinity. He is a present father, an advocate for environmental causes, and someone who is not afraid to show affection. However, herein lies a subtle psychological trap, the concept of positive toxic masculinity. This occurs when traditionally masculine traits, even positive ones like protection and strength, are taken to an extreme that still results in emotional suppression. The pressure to be the perfect protector or the pillar of strength can be just as damaging as the pressure to be aggressive and dominant, as both deny the full spectrum of the male emotional experience. Momoa's persona, even its most enlightened version, is still fundamentally based on strength. He's the protector of the family, the guardian of the oceans, the warrior with a heart of gold. The narrative is always that his strength is used for good. But what happens when he feels weak? The structure of his public image leaves no room for this possibility. He is trapped in the role of a caregiver and warrior, where his own need to be cared for or his own fragility has no place. This creates an emotional void, where the individual serves everyone but himself. The psychology behind this is complex. By adopting a positive version of masculinity, he becomes immune to many of the criticisms leveled at traditional toxic masculinity. This is a brilliant defense strategy. He gets to maintain the power and status associated with strength, while aligning himself with progressive social values. However, the internal demand remains the same. Be strong. Don't cry, don't waver, don't show weakness. The packaging has changed, but the content of emotional repression can be dangerously similar, leading to the same fate of loneliness and psychological exhaustion. This performance of strength for good can also be a form of image manipulation. By positioning himself as a giant, protective teddy bear, he generates immense goodwill from the public, which translates into brand power and commercial success. People want to believe in this ideal because it resolves the cognitive dissonance of admiring raw strength without feeling guilty for endorsing aggression. Momoa offers a perfect solution, a warrior you can take home to meet your mother. He sells an archetype everyone wants to buy, but the question remains, is he selling himself? In the process, the real danger of this model is that it becomes a new unattainable standard for ordinary men. If before the pressure was to be a ruthless alpha male, now the pressure is to be an eco-conscious warrior, a perfect father, a devoted husband, and a fierce protector, all at the same time, and without ever showing the strain it causes. The mask of strength has only gained new layers of complexity. The emotional void comes not from malice, but from the incessant performance of perfection, a burden that, ironically, requires superhuman strength to carry in silence. The announcement of the end of his marriage to Lisa Boat was a crucial moment in Jason Momoa's public narrative. It was the first major crack in his armor of family perfection and unshakable strength. To the public, the couple represented an ideal, the union of wild power with bohemian wisdom, a family that seemed to transcend the pressures of Hollywood. The dissolution of this ideal was a shock, not just because it was the end of a relationship, but because it shattered the fantasy that Momoa, in part, helped to sell. Suddenly, the pillar of strength showed that his foundation could also tremble. Psychologically, a public separation for someone whose image is so tied to the role of family protector is devastating. It attacks the core of the performed identity. The failure is not just personal. It is public and seems to invalidate the alpha male with a heart of gold narrative he had built. Subsequent public statements, where he spoke of living on the road and not having a home, revealed a rare and powerful glimpse into the void behind the mask. For the first time, strength gave way to palpable vulnerability, to a sense of loss and disorientation. This shattering of the image is a moment of danger and opportunity. The danger lies in losing control of the narrative. The media and the public can begin to reinterpret his story, looking for flaws and weaknesses. The persona of power can be replaced by one of pity or tragedy, which can be fatal for a career built on the admiration of strength. The control he maintained over his image, using his charisma and physical presence, was momentarily lost to the circumstances of real life, which are much harder to dominate. The opportunity, however, lies in the possibility of authenticity. By being forced to show his pain, he has the chance to connect with his audience on a deeper, more human level. Dark psychology teaches us that vulnerability can be a form of power. By admitting pain, he can become more relatable, more real than the superhero archetype would ever allow. This visible pain can be the catalyst for deconstructing the very mask he helped create, allowing a more complex and perhaps truer version of himself to emerge. However, the tendency for someone trained in emotional suppression is to try to fix the image as quickly as possible. The pressure to bounce back, to show resilience, and to emerge stronger than before is immense. The question that remains is whether this experience will lead to a fundamental change or just a more sophisticated reconstruction of the same mask. The pain was a glimpse of the man behind the icon, a reminder that the emotional void, when left untended, eventually manifests in ways that not even the most monumental strength can contain. Jason Momoa's journey and his mask of strength are not just a story about a celebrity. They are a mirror for our own lives and the society we live in. His rise and the challenges he faces reveal our deep and contradictory desire for archetypes of power. We celebrate him for his overwhelming strength, and at the same time, we long for glimpses of his vulnerability. This duality exposes a dark truth about our own psychology. We want our idols to be superhuman, so they can carry the burden of our own aspirations and fears. But we also want them to be human, so we can connect with their pain. The study of his persona is a lesson in the power of image and self-construction. Momoa teaches us that perception is a malleable reality. Through body language, charisma, and association with powerful archetypes, it is possible to shape how the world sees us. This is a neutral manipulation tool. It can be used to inspire, to gain power, or to defend oneself. The question he forces us to face is, by building an external persona to control others, are we not ultimately imprisoning ourselves within it? The mask we wear to face the world can become our true face. His story also serves as a cautionary tale about the cost of emotional suppression, even when disguised as virtue. The pressure to be the pillar, the protector, or the positive force can be as isolating as the more obvious toxic masculinity. The emotional void does not discriminate. It grows in the silence, in the absence of permission to feel weakness, sadness, or fear. The dark lesson here is that denying our negative emotions does not make them disappear. It only gives them more power, allowing them to corrode our psyche from within, until a crisis inevitably brings them to the surface. Admiring Jason Momoa for his strength is easy. The real psychological challenge is to examine why we are so drawn to this display of power. Do we see in him a freedom that we lack? A confidence we wish we had? Or does his persona allow us to enjoy a fantasy of domination and simplicity? In a world that feels increasingly complex and out of control, he becomes an escape, an embodiment of a primal solution to modern problems. And this attraction reveals more about our own anxieties than it does about him. Finally, The deepest lesson we can draw is about integrating the shadows. True strength does not lie in the denial of weakness, but in its acceptance and integration. A truly powerful individual is not one who never falls, but one who understands that vulnerability and strength are two sides of the same coin. Jason Momoa's mask of strength, with its emerging cracks, invites us to question our own masks. What are we hiding? And what is the price we pay to keep that facade intact? The answer to that question is the first step toward a more authentic and, paradoxically, more powerful way of being. The strength that intimidates and the vulnerability that hides. The warrior's mask and the void it protects. Jason Momoa's story is a powerful case study on what it means to be a man and an icon in our time. Here at The Truth, Dark Psychology, we do not seek to judge, but to understand the hidden tools and invisible pressures that shape the most captivating figures in our world. True strength is not the absence of weakness, but the courage to face it. To ensure you don't miss any of our future analyses and to continue unraveling the secrets of dark psychology, subscribe now, activate the notification bell, and most importantly, leave your opinion in the comments. Who do you want us to unravel next? Until next time.